Welcome back to my channel, guys. I'm doing a staycation right now in this beach town just north of Miami. It's called, I always mess up the name. It's called Sunny Isles Beach, but I always want to call it Sunny Beach Isles for some reason. I just feel like it sounds better maybe. I don't know, but I've been saying it wrong this whole time, and somebody working at the hotel corrected me last night, which is hilarious. But anyway, so I'm here. I basically just wanted to get away for a few days for a long weekend because I have some unused vacation days. And sometimes you want to get away, but you don't want to like really get away. Like I didn't want to hop on a plane. I didn't want to have to deal with major transportation costs. But I also felt silly doing a staycation literally like in my neighborhood at a hotel. So I thought, let me go 10, 15 miles away and see what the vibe is like. Plus, I figured maybe it would be a little bit cheaper because this place isn't like as tourist driven as Miami. So let me show you the view though, because the view is killer. Before I get into the actual story of this video, let me show you this view because it's sick. I wanted to make sure I had a direct view of the ocean. So just wait. By the way, the sun rises from that ocean view that I just showed you from my balcony. And I woke up right before the sunrise this morning, which never happens. I never wake up that early, but I never sleep well in hotels. Please tell me in the comments, are you like me where you always, it could be the nicest hotel and you still have a hard time, especially that first night? It's almost like I have to break into the bed like a new pair of shoes. I always have a hard time sleeping anyway at hotels. Anyway, so but I'm glad, for the first time ever, I'm glad that I had a hard time because the view of the sunrise was insane. Also, please ignore the sunburnt forehead. I put a ton of sunscreen this morning, but clearly it did not suffice. And excuse the messy hair, although I kind of like it because it's giving beachy bohemian, chic or whatever. It's a little messy. Okay, let's get into this story. Months ago, I want to say April. I want to say April because Miami Pride, yeah, that would make sense. Miami Pride, Gay Pride takes place in April in Miami. Now you're probably thinking that doesn't make sense. Pride takes place in June. Not in Miami. In Miami, Pride takes place in April, and I think it's because the summers here are so hot, so humid, like unpleasantly humid, that even June, which is the start of summer, I think it would be too unpleasant to host Pride at that time of year in terms of like a parade outside and so on. You don't want to be in a parade outside in the summer in Miami. So, anyway, in April, I went to what's called the Pride Village. In Miami Beach, they do this thing called the Pride Village where they have like booths, food, a stage with live shows, live concerts, and you just walk around. It's free. Anybody can walk through. Vendors, basically, you just pay for whatever you want. You want to buy a drink, you want to buy ice cream, you want to buy food. Some of it has nothing, some of the stuff there has nothing to do with Pride. They're just local businesses looking to make money or maybe promote themselves. And then some are obviously very Pride coded. There's all those like clinic sexual health booths and stuff as well, right? Very Pride coded. Anyway, so I went to that Pride Village, and I made a video about this in April, I believe. And I met this guy there. I was just walking, minding my own business, and this guy, very sexy guy, visiting from the Caribbean, which, if you're not aware of the lay of the land of Miami and South Florida, the Caribbean is literally, I mean, the closest island in the Bahamas, I want to say, is like an hour flight, maybe a little bit more. But most of the Caribbean islands are literally just a couple hours by flight from Miami. So when I say he was visiting from the Caribbean, it's not like a very far distance, but this guy was in Miami from the Caribbean and he approached me. He was like, "You're really good looking," or something very nice. And we had this, there was a thing there. There was a chemistry, there was an attraction. And I kind of like spazzed out, got nervous because I never get approached in person. And it was refreshing, but I also was like thrown off my game and didn't expect it. And in that video, I talked about how this guy kind of charmed me. And then as we walked around the village together, uh, to see, what the connection was like and so on, I got a weird vibe. Like he seemed suddenly disengage, and then he kind of engaged back in, and I just got a weird vibe. I was getting player vibes. But he did ask for my number. He was basically like, let's maybe hang out later, which I really did think was his way of soft rejecting me, because it went from there being a chemistry to then I couldn't read him. I couldn't, something just felt off. Okay. So he asked for my number, and then he did text me later that night, but it didn't really go anywhere. And I was just turned off. I felt, again, player vibes, like mixed signals is what I felt. I had made a video in April, to say that one more time, and so many of the comments were like, this is on you. You let, your mind do this work of, insecurity or whatever. But this guy was clearly into you, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of allowed some of those comments to gaslight me, where I was like, maybe I was the problem. Like, maybe I just didn't read the cues. Maybe the guy just wanted to hook up. He's visiting Miami, and then he realized that I was actually engaging and asking questions, and he got thrown off because he really just wanted a transactional hookup, and I didn't like reciprocate. Whatever. The comments had an impact where I was like, maybe I made this up. Maybe he really wasn't a play or whatever. Well, I have an update. So about a month ago, I went to this party, this gay party. I don't know if this is a nationwide thing or just a Miami thing, but in Miami, they do this party, which used to be monthly, but I feel like now it's like almost every weekend. They always send me, once you go to one of these things, once you go to one of these events where you register online and you put your credit card, you pay the credit card fee, whatever, now you're on some newsletter, and they bombard me with texts and emails, I want to say almost every week. And so there's this gay party that sort of like migrates around different venues of Miami. And when I say it's a gay party, it's really just like a bar. Sometimes it's literally a bar. Sometimes it's a club. Anybody can technically go to these events. I've seen a couple women here and there, but it's mostly gay men. And I will say it's a more polished crowd than the average crowd at a like a dive bar, right? Because you pay a fee, right? If you pay a cover fee to get into somewhere, theoretically, it's like more intentional people and all that. But it's all bullshit, because even though the guys are more elevated, and I would say are more sort of put together and polished, every time I go, people don't engage. They're in their little cliques, just like they would be at a club or at a bar. So whatever. But I went with a couple friends to one about a month ago, and who did I see but the Caribbean guy from Pride? Now, at first, I wasn't sure that it was him. It was also dimly lit. It's late night at this one was at a bar, basically, and it was packed. So I see this handsome guy in the distance. He looked familiar, but I wasn't positive it was him. And I also think he maybe had lost a little bit of weight. So that kind of like changes your. I mean, I know better than anybody. I don't know if you guys have noticed. I've been really trying to stick to the discipline of losing that baby fat that I've been holding on to for 30 plus years. But anyway, so I see him, and we made eye contact a couple times, and I engaged with the eye contact from a distance. But beyond that, again, I was like, if this is that guy, I got a strange vibe. He can come over and talk to me if he wants, but I'm not going to go out of my way to pursue him or approach him. But I did engage in eye contact, and then otherwise I just hung out with my friends. However, I have a hawk's eye. So the whole night, peripheral vision, right? I was sort of scoping out this, not just him, scoping out the scene, but I did notice that he was by himself, A. He was also a social butterfly, talking with he was an attractive guy. So maybe people approach him and then they talk. I don't know. But he talked to a lot of guys, I noticed. And it would often get touchy feely. But then he would quickly move on to somebody else. So I noted that as like, feels familiar, right? Towards the end of the night, I'm talking like it's now 2 a.m, maybe later. I'm having a great time just with the one friend of mine that's left, because, good friends, like, you have your banter, you have your stuff you talk about. And before we know it, it's sort of like we blinked and almost everybody had left. And there were about, by that point, maybe 20 people left at this bar. And at this point, with this small crowd left, the Caribbean guy is still there, and he's now like 2 feet away from us at the bar. Now, I've had multiple drinks. I'm with my friend. And finally, I caved because he's right there a couple feet away. And I'm like, I should just talk to him at this point. And I basically was like, hey, are you who I think you are? Like, we met at Pride a couple months ago. And he was like, yeah, I remember you. And so we talked a little bit. And then my friend, I had left him 2 feet away by himself. So I'm like, come over, like, come meet this guy. I met him at Pride. And he was again very touchy feely with me, just like he had been with the other guys that I noticed at this party, and also like he had been at Pride. And even though touchy feeliness is clearly a sign of interest or attraction, again, I just got this weird vibe. And I kid you not, within 2, 3 minutes of talking to me, to my friend and I, he literally just walks away and just leaves the venue. Doesn't say bye, doesn't say, oh, I'm not feeling well, oh, I'm really tired, I need to leave. Literally, we were just talking to him and he just departs the venue. Now, who knows? Maybe he was wasted out of his mind and didn't, just wanted to leave. I didn't take it personally, but it was jolting. And it's so funny because my friend, his immediate reaction was, that guy had there was a weird vibe going on, right? Like difficult to read. And I was like, yes. So I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. And I felt so vindicated from that experience at Pride, where so many of you were convinced that I was making something up in my mind and that this guy was clearly interested and I just wasn't reading the room and I made it about my complexes. Or no, this guy, something was off. And it's such a shame. It is such a tragedy when somebody is beautiful and charming, and also he was actually a conversationalist, and yet I don't know what the guy's complex is. Maybe he's one of those people. I've been watching this show that I made a video about, I think a couple years ago, but I watched this show on YouTube called Pop the Balloon. It is so entertaining. Please tell me in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. Pop the Balloon is an online dating show. It's very like superficial, transactional. People basically pop their balloon if they lose interest in a contestant of the opposite sex. It's all hetero. It's all hetero. Uh, and you see watching these shows in 2026 how surface and transactional people really are when it comes to their dating criteria and how quickly people get turned off, and also how often their reasoning is irrational slash mean-spirited, I would say. And so it just made me think of Pop the Balloon when this guy was seeming interested, but also like backing out at the same time. And the mixed signals of it all reminded me of Pop the Balloon. And I felt a little bit pathetic, by the way, that I spoke to him knowing I had had that instinct at Pride. But, sometimes there's liquid courage from being a few drinks in. And there's also, at least in my case, your vulnerability comes out, your fragility, your vulnerability. So I don't think I would have done that sober. I think I would have remained guarded. But a few drinks in, he was right there. I was like, fuck it, let me talk to this guy. But yes, I felt very vindicated. The lesson is trust your instincts, don't listen to the comments. And the other lesson is, my brother always says this, nothing good happens after midnight. I mean, I feel like in my early 20s, sometimes I had fun nights meeting strangers in well, maybe it's a location thing. New York City, you have a lot of interesting people in New York City. Miami, I don't know. I don't know. I've had more disappointments than not talking to somebody late at night, such as this incident. I'm about to head back to the tiki bar because this boy really wants a margarita or a cerveza, a beer of some kind with some snacks, some bar snacks. Sometimes you're just in the mood for just snacks on a vacation. So I'm going to do that and I'll catch you guys next time.